Hallo, ek is E.T. Welkom by my kanaal waar ons als saam doen. I've got a new doggy. This is my new friend. Look at him. Say his name. Oh, hello. His name is Spike. I adopted Spike about 4 days ago, and he will definitely feature in some of my videos. In this video, I will teach you very basic Afrikaans sentence construction in the direct form. I will touch on the indirect form, but mostly we will be looking at the direct form. Then I will teach you how to use Stompy. A lot of you have asked me about Stompy. I was hesitant to touch on Stompy for various reasons, and we will get to those reasons in a bit. But I will, to the best of my ability, introduce you to Stompy, and I will also teach you the golden rule of sentence construction in Afrikaans that I think I actually do really believe is above or better than Stompy. The golden rule, as I call it, and my Afrikaans advisor calls it, it's the one that the first language speakers use when we learn Afrikaans, right? So we use that golden rule in sentence construction. We do not use Stompy in first language Afrikaans. We never learn Stompy. I didn't learn Stompy at school. It is for additional language, second, third, fourth. They use Stompy to learn sentence construction, but we do not the first language speakers. All right, so let's get started. This is the basic word order in a sentence. It's also the same in English. In direct form, the sentence starts with onderwerp, which is your subject, then werkwoord, which is your verb, and voorwerp, which is your object. In indirect form, it's just the other way around. So you have voorwerp, werkwoord, and then onderwerp, indirect form. But we are looking only at the direct form for now. So this is simple sentence construction. You can also not have an object and just have subject, verb. That's also a possibility. So let's look at these examples. Die hond eet sy kos. That means the dog eats his food or its food. Rina koop klere. Rina buys clothes. Hy sing 'n liedjie. He sings a song. Here's a little exercise just for simple translation and sentence construction. In the top right, you'll see 3 clouds. The first one contains subjects, the second one verbs, the third one objects. And all you have to do is just translate the sentences to my left and fill in the words that you think fits into those spaces. So you can pause the video, do the exercise, and then just play the video again. I give the answer in the next clip. The first one there, the answer is die onderwyser merk vraestelle. The second one, die walvis eet plankton. The third one, die afrigter blaas 'n fluitjie. And the last one, die kok kook kos. Okay, so finally we get to Stompy. Right, so you'll see on my left, there is a line Stompy with V1 and V2, and then below that there's another Stompy with only a V. So the simple explanation for the difference there is the top line containing V1 and V2 in the Stompy acronym is for past tense and future tense. The second line containing only the V is for present tense. Now there is an exception as always, and I will get to that, where you still use the top one more or less in the present tense, but don't think about that now. We will get to that. For now, the top one containing the V1 and V2, that is past tense or future tense. The rest of Stompy, the Stompy part, that stays the same in past, present, and future tense. So we look at the S, that is the subject. That means the who. Who did the action? Who performed the action? Then we have the V1, which is the first part of a verb, but forget about that for now. Then T, which is for time. That just means when. When does it take place? Is it morning, afternoon, yesterday, tomorrow, that sort of thing. Then the O is for object. That means what or whom or whatever the action is being performed on. So if the dog eats food, then food is your object, and the dog is the subject, and the verb is eat, and that is in present tense, right? So that only has the blue V, but again, forget about that now. We're just looking at what the letters stand for. M is for the manner in which this takes place, right? So how is it done? So basically M is the adverb. So M would be explaining how the verb is performed, how the verb is done. So it's the adverb, die bijwoord, right? But we'll get to that in due time. Then the P is for place. So where? P for place. Where is this taking place? Is it on the porch? Is it in America? Is it on the lawn? In the city? In a building? You know, that sort of thing. Location. Then we have V2 again, which is second part of the verb. Forget about that for now. We'll get to that. And then you have the I, which is for the infinitive. Not all sentences have an I. Sometimes sentences have a second part that is not an infinitive, but in explaining, it still explains the why, but it's not infinitive. We will also get to that. So this is just what the letters stand for, and we will look at it a lot throughout this video, and I will explain it as much as I can. Remember, and this is very important, remember that Stompy is a good general guide for word order, but Stompy is not set in stone, right? The word order in Stompy is not the be-all, end-all. There are varieties, there are outliers, there are variations, there are things left out, things added. Like I said, sometimes you have something that answers the why in the sentence, but it's not an infinitive. It's just descriptive. And then you get confused. It's like, the Stompy said it's infinitive. Now I have this part, but it's like, it's a why, but it's not infinitive. Right, so Stompy, good general guide for word order. Not the be-all and end-all. Please remember, that's very important. All right, so the golden rule that I will teach you soon. The golden rule is more the thing where you can go, yes, that is very much exactly how it should be, and it cannot vary from that. But the golden rule is less restrictive, allowing you to move things around outside of that word order. The golden rule consists of 3 things. And besides those 3 things, that must always be in that order. You can move things around before and after. So we'll get to that. So the second line we see here is just the blue V. That's for present tense. There is no second part to a verb in present tense. Not in the way that it is in past and future tense. So it's just the one verb. However, we have verbs in Afrikaans that you split, like maak klaar or klaarmaak. Sometimes the word is one verb, but you can also split it in 2, and then it's still present tense. Now, when you split those verbs in 2, they also fall in the places of past and future tense. I will talk again about this because this is confusing. It can be confusing. And then also remember that you can form a sentence with 5 verbs, right? The sentence can go on. So V1 and V2 in the past and future tense in Stompy does not mean that you can only have 2 verbs in a sentence, or the V, right, at the bottom there in the present tense means you can only have 1 verb in a sentence in present tense. That's not what it means. That is just the place of the first verb and the word order of the first verb. But if you then have a second verb, the word order will follow the same pattern. So keep in mind, this is not set in stone. Not the be-all and end-all, can change. Right, so then there at the bottom in that red thing I said, remember, verbs that can be 1 or 2 words can also be divided into a part 1 and a part 2. in present tense. Okay, so again, we will look at that shortly. Now, the golden rule. Now this one, I don't know if we really call it the golden rule. I've coined it the golden rule, but we learn this. This is the holy grail of word order that we learn in first language. I'm not sure whether they actually teach this to people in additional language or, third, fourth, and so on language. But this is how we learn. The golden rule word order must always be in this order. No matter what you move around, what you put in between those things, they must just exist in the sentence in that order. Right, so we're looking at tyd, wyse, plek. Tyd, wyse, plek. That's how we learn it in Afrikaans. That is time, manner, place. The time, the manner, the place. Those things must always be in that order in a sentence. That's important to remember. This is the be-all and end-all of sentence construction in Afrikaans. You can have the object in front and the verb at the back. You can have things move around. You can have other things inserted between tyd, wyse, plek. As long as tyd, wyse, plek always occurs in that sequence in the sentence. So this is your golden rule. If Stompy becomes too restrictive, then you go to this, because this will guide you with how things should be and what is not allowed to change, which is these things. Except if you know, people, when you speak to somebody, sometimes we give one word answers and things like that. Now, obviously, there's things that doesn't follow any kind of sentence construction. It's colloquial. We just speak. You answer one word. You ask 2-word questions. Things like that. It still happens, and we fully understand each other, right? So, but for formal sentence construction, I'm I'm falling over my words. For formal sentence construction, this is it. This is it. Right. So you'll see there at the bottom, I've just circled for you what tyd, wyse, plek refers to, and what are the things that must remain in that order in your sentence. Okay, so I'm going to explain the V1 and V2 in the past and future tense in Stompy a little bit more. Important to keep in mind, you don't need all of the letters that is in Stompy to form a sentence. You do need a subject and a verb. In general, that's a rule, and well, at least in English as well. You don't need to have every single part in your sentence for it to be a sentence. So that's also just very important to keep in mind. Right, so we look at Stompy. I've explained what these letters are for, what they mean. The V1 and V2, I think a lot of people struggle with that. So V1 is the first part of the past tense or the future tense verb, right? So in Afrikaans, when it's past tense, we always have het and then a second part to that verb, right? So het gestamp, het gevlieg, het gedit, het gedat. So you always have het, and that het is what they call V1. Het is the first part of the past tense verb because het is what we call the hulpwerkwoord. It's the helping verb. It forms part of the verb. So it's one verb concept, even though it's two separate words, right? So this is not the same as a verb like kos maak, which can be kos maak one word or maak kos 2 words. This is not the same because kos maak and maak kos is still present tense. It has 2 parts, which will also be inserted into the sentence in a V1 and V2 place, but it's present tense. Right, so you have to keep that in mind, that those present tense verbs that can be split into 2 then will also fall into the V1 and V2 slot. But V1 and V2, the reason they are there is to help you with past tense placement and future tense placement. of the het and the future tense verbs. All right, so we'll get to the future tense now. Right, so the examples I've given there, and I've said first part of verb in the past and future tense. And then we refer to that first part as the hulpwerkwoord, which is the helping verb. You also have that in future tense. So the first one, V1, would be the hulpwerkwoord. Then we have het gevlieg, het geskree, het gedink. And then the future tense, we have the hulpwerkwoord gaan vlieg, which is going to fly. Gaan vlieg, gaan skree, which is going to scream. Gaan dink, going to think. So gaan hulpwerkwoord will be in the spot of V1 in the future tense. And het is a hulpwerkwoord will be in the spot of V1 in the past tense. Right? And then the second part forms part of this unit of a verb, V2. It's still part of it, so it's not a separate verb. It is, but it isn't. It's one concept. You can't separate them from each other, right? So they form part, they form a whole. We look at V2, that's the second part of a verb in past and future tense, and it is the actual verb, right? So it is the action, it's the action being performed. It's not a helping verb, it's not an indication somewhere, it's the actual action. So then you look at het gevlieg. Now remember, in past tense, in Afrikaans, you have to put the ge in front of the verb. Het gevlieg, het geskree, het gedink. In future tense, there's no ge. Then we have gaan vlieg, gaan skree, and gaan dink. Here I give you different examples of hulpwerkwoorde, the helping verbs. You get some in past tense, you get some in future tense. Het is not the only hulpwerkwoord in past tense, and gaan is not the only one in future tense. And it shows you they all will be in the place of the V1. So they'll be in between the subject S and the T for time in your Stompy acronym. Right, so we have verlede tyd, which is past tense. We have het, wou, sou, kon, moes. Those are all hulpwerkwoorde, which can be in the spot of V1 in the past tense. And then toekomstige tyd, which is your future tense, you can have sal, wil, kan, moet. Those are all hulpwerkwoorde in the spot of V1 in the future tense. Here we have an example of a sentence and how it changes from present to past to future and so on tense, and how Stompy is applied. Remember, when you have a subject in the beginning of a sentence, the next thing will always be a verb. So the word order of Stompy indicates subject, verb, time, etc. in the direct form. So if you have the verb in the beginning, or the subject in the beginning of the sentence, your next thing will always be a verb, whether it is just the V for present tense, or whether it is the V1, the first part of the verb in your past and future tense, and also for the verbs that split in two. I think that one's gonna cause a little bit of a consternation. Okay, so let's look at the example. Die kind skryf daagliks sy werk netjies in sy boek om goeie punte te kry. And you will see how Stompy is applied to that sentence, right? So you can study this, come back to the video, look at it more closely. Then you see, die kind het daagliks sy werk netjies in sy boek geskryf om goeie punte te kry. And it shows you the infinitive, om goeie punte te kry, at the back. And then the next one is future tense. Die kind sal daagliks sy werk netjies in sy boek skryf om goeie punte te kry. Right, and then the last one is the negative. You remember in Afrikaans we have the double negative. So the last one's the negative. Die kind het nog nooit sy werk netjies in sy boek geskryf om beter punte te kry nie. Right, so that is how the negative is applied to Stompy. in the past tense. Again, I will advise you to take time to study these examples. In this clip, you see that we have the STOMPI acronym on the far left of these sentences. This is to show that a sentence can start with different parts of STOMPI. And then it shows you what the word order remains like, how it looks if you start the sentence with a different part of STOMPI. And one of those parts you started with is then the indirect. If you started with an object, voorwerp, that is the indirect form. The other one's a direct form. It's just that you've placed a different thing at the start of the sentence. But remember the golden rule. If you start a sentence with something other than subject, even for subject, if you start the sentence with subject, it always follows that golden rule, tyd, wyse, plek. But if you start the sentence with something other than a subject, it still follows the word order of tyd, wyse, plek. Those things must be in order. Everything else you can move around. But those things must be in order. So we have, die kind skryf daagliks sy werk netjies in sy boek om goeie punte te kry. Then we look at the next one. It starts with the time. Daagliks skryf die kind sy werk netjies in sy boek om goeie punte te kry. Now I want you to go through those things in your own time. The layout's there. You can see the one that starts with the O for object. That is the indirect order, word order. Sy werk word daagliks netjies deur die kind in sy boek geskryf om goeie punte te kry. It's still tyd, wyse, plek. That golden rule still applies, right? It always applies. So if Stompy becomes too restrictive again, move Stompy aside a little bit. Stick to tyd, wyse, plek. Must always be like that. Here I demonstrate how that last part, the why, is not always an infinitive. Right? So I in Stompy is for the infinitive, but your why can be another why. So let's look at the two examples here. Hy skop vandag die bal herhaaldelik oor die pale om sy spel te verbeter. So in that first sentence, om sy spel te verbeter, that is an infinitive. And it follows the Stompy acronym to a T. Right, so you can see there, it's now the Stompy acronym in present tense. It means it only has one verb. Right, it doesn't have a V1 and V2, it's just V1. It's just the one verb. No hulp werkwoord. But the second example there, we have die hond eet vanoggend sy kos vinnig op die stoep, want hy is honger. This is an explanation. It's an answer to a why. Right? The dog is eating very fast because he's hungry. So it still follows that word order of Stompy, but it's not an infinitive at the back. That is why I said stick to the golden rule. Because Stompy will sometimes confuse you with its restriction. There does not need to be an infinitive in your sentence when you want to answer the question of why. It can simply be because blah blah blah. Want yada yada. Right? So you have that option. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so I promised that I would explain to you in a better fashion what I meant when I said in the present tense you can also split a verb into V1 and V2. Or you also have a part 1 and part 2, just in a different way. So in this example, I clarify that because that is important to understand. At the top, you'll see a verb called klaarmaak, or its other split version, maak klaar. That is to finish. It depends on how you use it, but it means to finish or finish what you're doing. Klaarmaak, maak klaar. Get ready. We also use it for getting ready when you're getting dressed. Maak klaar, klaarmaak, or finish something off. Right. That verb is one of many in Afrikaans that's split into two. And if you've watched my verb videos, or if you've just learned Afrikaans for a while, you'll know there are quite a few. That's this 1 or 2 verbs, depending on how you use it. So we have the first example, ek maak klaar. There we have subject, right? And then the first part, maak, and the second part, klaar. This is not past tense, it's not future tense, it's present tense. But because of this verb that can be split into 2, if it is in its order of maak first, and then klaar is second. If it's that word order, it's not one word, it's 2 words. It's one verb, but now it's got 2 parts, but it's present tense. It's not past tense, it's not future tense, but still it has a V1 and V2. The difference is V1 in this case and V2 in this case is the verb. It's not a hulpwerkwoord and then perform the action, right? The actual verb. So this is not a hulpwerkwoord. This is verb and verb. It's the first part and the second part of the actual verb. So not a hulpwerkwoord and then the verb. Then you look at the second example, ek maak vinnig klaar. Right? So now you see it's being split. You've got the manner in between. First part, second part of this verb in that word order. Ek sal vinnig klaar maak. Ek sal vinnig klaar maak. Now you have V1, that is future tense. So that is a hulpwerkwoord, sal. V1 there, sal, hulpwerkwoord, vinnig klaar maak. Now you see that klaar is in front. That verb is now in its together in its one word form. Because this is future tense and it needs a hulpwerkwoord with it to form the future tense. Then it slots into the stereotypical V1 and V2 of Stompy. Then we have ek gaan vinnig klaar maak. I am going to get ready quickly or get ready quickly. Ooh, let me not mess up there. Ek gaan vinnig klaar maak. There we have V1 is gaan, hulpwerkwoord, helping verb. And then klaar maak in that form, again is the one word, and that is the second part. Now we've got hulpwerkwoord and the actual verb, the actual action. And it is as it would be in the past or future tense format. And then the last one we have ek het vinnig klaar gemaak. That is the past tense of klaar maak. Klaar gemaak. One word. And then het is your hulpwerkwoord, which indicates the past tense. So I hope this makes sense to you. If you have questions about this specific situation and you want me to make a video about this situation, let me know in the comment section and I'll happily do that. This is the end of my first sentence construction Stompy Golden Rule video. I will definitely make more sentence construction videos in future. Please let me know in the comment section whether this was helpful, whether you still have questions that I haven't answered, and what would you like me to teach you about sentence construction. Do you have specific questions? Would you like me to make exercises, like videos with exercises where we go through creating sentences and things like that? You can really ask me anything that you need with regards to sentence construction. Just write it in the comment section and I will respond, and then I will see what I can create for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this is the most useful Stompy video out there. I hope so. I'll see you in the next video.